3 photographers from 3 different time zones, all connected by night photography and all shooting with the Pentax K1. We are the Nightaxians. We had a comment from someone on our first episode regarding weather, which is always an interesting topic for anybody who shoots outside or has to drive somewhere to shoot. And that comment was from Outer Rim, which is a cool name.
I like that.
Yep, very spacey, if that's what it was intended to be. The comment is there, or a question, is there also a night taxi that brings you Nightaxians out to the night location? What is your take on weather? Do you shoot less in winter, or is there some seasonal approach? That's a pretty good question. I like that.
It is.
It is pretty valid. Anybody want to start that one?
First of all, if there is a Nightaxian taxi, I want it to look sort of like the Starship Enterprise, but like in RV form, something like that. That's kind of what I want. Or maybe the Galileo's, the Galileo space shuttle. That's what I'm hoping for.
You better believe that I'm overlaying those photos on here, because I know there's a graphic of a RV that has warp nacelles.
Absolutely.
And I know that there is a Galileo minivan out there. I'm going to find them.
Okay.
Yep. I'm going to find them. That or a Nightaxians transporter would be better. That's the future.
Right.
You know? I'm going to go shoot in Joshua Tree tonight from Cape Cod. I'll be back in an hour.
Hey, how about having a Nightaxians DeLorean?
Oh,
You hit 88 mile an hour and you can just go wherever you want.
Yeah, I have a hard time tracking down those flux capacitors, though.
Yeah, I've heard they've had some problems because of all the pandemic parts delays.
Yeah. It's really hard to get.
I just read something like a week ago about the flux capacitor factory burning down in Taiwan or something. So we're going to be without it for a while, unfortunately.
Such a tragedy.
It's
terrible.
Yep. All those wasted flux capacitors, and then all those flux capacitors on that cargo ship that was coming across the Atlantic with all the Porsches on it. They all went down with the Porsches. So we'll rely on just our cars for now. So the answer to this is no. There's no taxi that brings us out to the locations. We're all on our own. Usually there's a rental car that brings us out to the locations, or in several occasions it's been a Kenmobile.
It has.
It has been, and we very much appreciate that.
A Ken taxi.
That's right.
Yeah, a Kentaxian.
I am.
Yeah.
Which reminds me. Okay, hold on one sec. Whoops.
That's awesome.
All right.
That's funny.
Show that.
Kentax.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's just too easy.
That is too easy.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And he set you up for that.
He did. Is that also what they call it if you show up at someone's house and ask for a snack during the visit? It's a Kentax.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. That's a stretch. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So what's the take on the weather for you guys? I think we all have different answers on this. So I'll check in with Mike first, because I have no idea what your answer is going to be. I feel like you move around a little bit, so your answers may change.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost prefer colder weather because the sky is clearer.
Okay.
And in fact, years ago, I had photographed at a location and it was so cold, the windows on some of the cars there were starting to frost over.
Right.
And actually the lens on my lens, I had to wipe it off after every use because it was frosting over also. But the sky was crystal clear.
Okay. That must have made it interesting for light painting. Frosted glass.
It did. It actually came out pretty good.
Nice.
Sometimes it'll be very cloudy when you get to a location, and not much you can do. So if I show up someplace and it's cloudy, I'll just go ahead and shoot.
Yeah.
Just because.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Mike, what's the forecast for you that you look at and say, nope, not tonight? Is there one?
Oh yeah. If it's probably more than 50% cloud cover, I'll probably not go.
Okay. Is there also a temperature minimum or temperature maximum that you would stay in for?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
I don't care.
Okay.
Okay, good
It's
enough.
all open.
Yeah, and so do you find that you can pretty much, I mean, you live way south of me, so you probably can get most nights out of the year are up for grabs. There's probably not a season for you. There's no seasonality for you, really?
No, not now. There's really not much of I guess sometimes in the spring it's a problem because you'll get some clouds and rain occasionally. But aside from that, no, it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, like some areas sort of get that monsoon season and may not work out, or in other areas they get a fire season, as Ken might be able to elaborate on.
Yeah, Ken would know.
Yeah. So, okay, so to recap, Mike is pretty much game for anything except for very cloudy skies. Temperature in either direction is not a big deal. You'll work around it. And you live in an area that seasonality is not usually a problem. You're currently, as of the recording of this video, you are in the state of
Texas.
And you are heading to
Arkansas.
And the weather is probably fairly similar most of the time.
Arkansas gets colder.
Okay.
It's quite a bit further north, so it does get colder, but not as cold as, say, what you would get, Tim.
Right.
But it also won't get as warm as where Ken is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, it's kind of balancing out there a little.
So do you think then when you move, you will change your seasonal opinion of your shooting, or based on what you know, is that going to stay the same?
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Everybody's got different thresholds,
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Check in later.
Okay. Okay.
We definitely will.
I will do that.
That'll be another episode.
Yeah.
Ken, you seem like you're pretty much out year round from what I can tell.
Yeah, there's no slowdown for me. So, initially, like most night photographers, I started going out in the warmer months because it was Milky Way season, and that was, when I first started, I was thinking dark skies, Milky Ways, kind of that sort of thing. But then, as I've broadened the sort of nights in which I go out and photograph, I just go out whenever. And so like Mike, I'm actually preferring some of the colder months now. And there's several reasons for it. Like what Mike says about the clearer skies, sometimes that's, quite true. There's just nothing sometimes like a winter sky, super clear. The moon or the stars are just super bright. So there's that. But here's another thing though. During the summer, it might not get dark until about 9:30 at night. Whereas during the winter, I might be able to start photographing at, 5 p.m. 5:30 p.m., something like that. And I really like that because, if you're starting at 9:30, sometimes even 10 o'clock, you're talking about potentially a really, really long evening. But, if you start at 5 o'clock, you can get in 7 hours and still be at, or 5 hours, 7 hours, and still be in bed at a somewhat reasonable hour.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a really good point.
Yeah. So, I really like that. So clouds. I love clouds. I love it when it's, maybe, 30, 40, 50% cloudy, particularly when the clouds are moving. I really like that. And in fact, I incorporate that into my photos. I use the clouds to frame the subject quite often by having them whoosh past them. So I actually really like clouds, and I've come to prefer that over any other night sky, which, it's sort of odd because night photographers usually try and avoid the clouds, not embrace them, but I've come to really love them. So basically it's all good. And so there was an instance that I've told you guys before where I was going out to shoot some military aircraft, and the Clear Outside app was giving me something like 98% cloud cover, but it was all high clouds. And they differentiate between low, middle, and high clouds. And if it's low clouds and it's 100%, I'll probably stay in because there's nothing doing. Unless I'm out already. If I'm out already and it's 100%, I'll probably just keep shooting. But if I think it's going to be like that, I'll probably stay in. But high clouds, almost 100%, I'm still going out. And part of the reason why is because, first of all, high clouds come and go, and they're a lot more wispy, and you can see stars through them, or the moon, or what have you. And sometimes, as a bonus, they sort of act like Mother Nature's largest softbox. But, for instance, I've gotten some really amazing photos with almost 100% high cloud cover, but still getting the Milky Way, and it actually looked better like that. So I'm going out during 100% high cloud cover pretty much every single time.
That brings up a really good point on the weather apps, because first off, it might be helpful to mention what Clear Outside does. And you introduced me to this. It gives you different altitudes of potential cloud coverage for a location, for the next several hours. And I found that it's pretty accurate. And I found also that people who look at the app will see that high cloud cover and say, oh, it's 100% or it's 80% or whatnot. And they're like, man, maybe we're not going to go out tonight. But that also could be such a thin cloud cover that to the naked eye, and even to your camera to some extent, you may not even see it. Where, to your point about the low cloud cover, that's the stuff that's whizzing by over your head at a few 100 feet, 1,000 feet.
Right.
And it's terrible for night photography because it's suddenly there and it's thick and you can't see through it. So that's a good point. Mike,
blurring everything.
Yeah. Do you use an app, Mike? Is the weather app that you like to rely on? Is it that one or something else?
I use same one, Clear Outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Yeah, it is. I use that Astrospheric, I think is the name.
Astrospheric. Yeah, that's a good one too, because it gives that up to the minute radar conditions, or the radar view.
Yes, it also gives you a number for what they call seeing, which would be how the night sky is going to look based on the conditions. A little added feature. That's nice. And then I like the most recent Apple weather app. It's getting closer to, there was an app that I think they bought called Dark Sky. They seem to be integrating it more into that. But I think you've really got to use a couple different apps and build your own decision on that rather than just one source.
Sure.
Right.
That said, Clear Outside also gives things like percentage of precipitation or likelihood of precipitation, and temperature, and a number of other things. So it is really quite useful. So
no seasonality for you either then, really. You're just out there.
No, that said, I am in California, so it's a little easier for me to say that because California, unless I go up to the mountains, and I do that anyway, but it's not going to get cold enough to where I think, oh no, this is a no-go, I'm staying in. So, but I even go up to the mountains. I'm photographing at I think 10,000 feet during the winter sometimes, if I can get there, of course.
Sure.
And I'll still do that. Most of the time I'm doing that in the summer, but sometimes I'll do it in the winter as well.
You photograph a lot of places out in the desert too that you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell that it's 25 degrees on a January evening, or it's 105 degrees in July.
Right.
You know, I mean, Joshua Tree pretty much looks the same year round. Unless you get a little snow.
Yeah, know? Unless we get a little bit of snow, but otherwise people, can't immediately tell that, it's 35 or 40 degrees or what have you.
Right. So I can get away with that on the beaches here.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually my way of getting around it sometimes, but I kind of lose the skies because I do Milky Way and I also do the moonlit stuff.
Right.
And I probably do have the most seasonality then out of the three of us.
Agreed.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So I definitely have more restrictions only because of the seasonality, not because I don't want to be out in the cold or anything, but on the Cape, I live in Massachusetts on Cape Cod. So we have 4 seasons. Our summers are very humid here. And when you have a warm evening and high humidity, you have a high dew point. And that means that you have a very wet lens and wet gear, and everything just feels damp. So there's a lot of wiping down. We all went on a trip to West Virginia a couple years ago and shot in that old abandoned amusement park. And it was 100% humidity. The ground fog was coming up. It was tough to be wiping things down all the time. And there's lens rings, and I think we were using, didn't we stop at the Walmart and buy a bunch of hand warmers?
Yeah, we had a whole bunch of hand warmers, and we didn't buy enough of them. They ran out. They were working flawlessly, and then we just ran out of them. We weren't anticipating that it would be that foggy for that long.
Yep. Yeah, it was a cheap solution to keeping your lens above dew point. It does work if you have some tape. Yeah. But because that lens warmer is not inside of something that's also producing heat, like your glove and your hand in there, and that would last a lot longer. Instead, you're attaching it to metal outside. And,
correct.
Even though I think on that particular night, it was in the low to mid 70s, that's still cooler than the hand warmer. So mine each one lasted like 35 to 40 minutes, and that was the end of it, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some people who put them inside a beer cozy, and they get more mileage out of it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And now they've got the USB lens rings and so on. So I find that most of the time I can shoot until around midnight in the peak of the summer here before I start seeing a lot of the dew. Temperature wise, I don't think I have a cutoff. I've shot down as low as 15 degrees. And we've talked about this before, Ken, too, where 15 degrees here feels warmer than 30 degrees there because of the humidity. Like that night we were in Joshua Tree, and I could have sworn it was 20 degrees, but it was actually 40, but the humidity was like 14%. So
there was something about that night that felt especially cold, because usually 40 degrees doesn't feel that cold, but there was something about that night. And remember, we kept hitting cold pockets as well. So
we did. It was like the area was haunted or something.
Yeah. Very strange.
But from a seasonal standpoint, there's definitely a time of the year that I just don't shoot. And that's usually right after Christmas until around April 1st. And there's 2 main reasons for that. One is the conditions here, temperature wise, can be pretty terrible. They can be super windy. Besides being cold, we get snow. And it's blowing, blizzard conditions. And the other thing is, which in and of itself is fine if you have a landscape that's interesting to shoot under those conditions. But I don't feel like I do, because other than shooting the stuff I've already shot, like the lighthouses and so on, the structures, for the most part, everything just looks barren. You see an area like the desert where, the Joshua trees look the same all the time. The cactus look the same all the time. But then you come out to New England and you just have no leaves on the trees and the grass is brown, and you know that it's supposed to be something else and look nicer, but it doesn't in these pictures. So I just don't bother that time of year. The reason I get so much mileage out of the late fall and early winter is because of Christmas lights.
Sure.
You get some nice fresh snow, you get the Christmas lights, it's festive. That's its own thing. I'm not out shooting any Milky Way at that point. And I don't go out and shoot Milky Way. And I've really focused on that in the last couple of years, no pun intended. I don't go out and shoot that until later in the spring too, because I like how it aligns better where I am with the subjects I like to shoot. And I like to stay up late and then go to bed. I do not like to go to bed early and get up early. So for those of you out there who might be shooting the Milky Way and getting up at 3:30 right now or 3:00, okay, that's just not me. My goal is to never see a sunrise. As far as I know, somebody goes and flips a switch and the sun turns on, and that's it. But to your point earlier about the winter and the hours, also that is nice once you start getting into October and the days start getting shorter. You get a full night of shooting in by midnight, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, it is. But then you get into June and you can't start shooting until 9:45, 10:00. And then maybe you can shoot until 3:15, somewhere around there. So it's a balance. But, for New England, that's how I do it. I think it just really depends on the subject matter too.
Yeah, I think, given what you were mentioning before about the starkness, the loss of leaves on the trees and things like that, I think maybe there might be some really good images to be had by embracing that starkness and maybe desaturating the photos a little bit, or going for something that's a little bit more forlorn or creepy or strange or eerie. Something like that. I think there's some real opportunities there.
I have found myself going more into environments that were less dependent on natural features. So there's some nice harbors around that. The silver lining is there's certain areas around the Cape that are so congested with boats and activity, even in the summer in the middle of the night, that now in December or March, that's devoid of that. And so I can get some of that, like old docks and things, it's darker in certain areas. You can go on to certain beaches that you couldn't before because no one's going to be out on that beach in the middle of the night. So maybe there's a pier that you want to shoot. They're not going to be out there partying in February. So there's some opportunity here and there. But I haven't done any night work that I was going to do anything with really other than testing gear since the week before Christmas. At this point. Wow. And today's February 26th. So, and I don't plan on doing anything. This is the time of year where I'm looking at my gear and thinking, let me try this and try that. And I might run out and just experiment, but you'll probably never see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers the weather question. But before we started this conversation and we started recording, we mentioned surprise weather events to some degree, like lightning. Sometimes you're out in an environment, stuff happens.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. So that's the other thing is, not so much California, because California doesn't have a lot of lightning, but Nevada and Arizona, they have these wonderful storm cells that come racing through. And sometimes if you're in a really expansive place like the Grand Canyon, you can photograph storm cells that are really quite far away, and it feels like it's pretty safe. I don't know how, I'm not going to recommend that people run out and photograph lightning, of course, but if the storm cell is pretty far away and you use a slightly long lens, you can get some amazing things in night photography and, or twilight photography, where you can get storm cells with lightning, and the lightning is pretty consistent. And a lot of times it'll strike in the same place numerous times. So what I'll do is I'll set my camera up and just let it keep clicking away. And that does two things. One is that it almost assures that I'll get lightning strikes. But the second thing is that I can get these wonderful time lapses. So if I'm clicking away for, who knows, even as short as an hour or two, that gives me a short time lapse that I can use as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there are storm chasers out there. I've met different people out and about who specifically will go out and look for those types of environments. But, and I've done that on occasion if I saw a storm cell coming through. But sometimes the weather might be unexpected, but it totally works out.
Yeah.
If you feel safe.
Yeah, it's got to feel really safe, and you got to be safe. So I'm not really encouraging people to necessarily go chase lightning storms or anything like that. But if the opportunity arises and you're pretty safe, go for it. And what you can do too is, like I said before, I'll set up my camera, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll just go sit in the car, because that is a little bit safer. It's certainly safer than like on the edge of a cliff. near Grand Canyon or something like that. So that's always an opportunity too.
I'd love partly cloudy skies generally.
Yes, absolutely.
I find that people are very binary thinkers when it comes to weather and whether or not they want to go out and shoot. It's not clear. I'm not going out. There's a little bit of clouds. I don't want to go out. You have to be careful with that because there's going to be times where you decide not to go out because the forecast said it was going to do a certain thing. And then you look out the window and you see that it's actually pretty nice. And on the flip side, I've gone out to places where I thought it was going to be great and it wasn't. So, I think it's worth just going out there, if it's not that far of a drive. And if the first cloud shows up, work with it. If a lot of clouds show up, maybe something's coming, but maybe that'll pass. And patience is key, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just use those clouds to your advantage and make it part of the composition, and make it bracket your subject or what have you. I wanted to say that the three of us Nightaxians, we've photographed during very cloudy conditions along Route 66 in Arizona before, and those photos look phenomenal because there's a lot of amazing color in the sky. There's a lot of texture. And,
you get really great texture.
Yeah. And so even though it was near 100% cloud cover, we got awesome photos that I'd like to think a lot of them were more interesting than if we had stars as pinpoints or star trails or things like that. So great texture, great lights. Some of the lights were, from the moon backlighting it. Other lighting was from nearby Flagstaff, light pollution, in other words. And it looked great. And some of the light pollution like nearby, like perhaps Winslow or something like that, and it just really looked great. And so all you do is you just if you need to, you bump up your ISO a little bit, and otherwise it's all good.
Yeah, shorten your exposure. If you've got some patchy clouds and you want to, if you go too long, you'll end up with sort of a blanket, and that doesn't always look good. But if you can shorten them down, you can still work with it. Yeah. Or you a lot of places you can just not even really compose for the sky. You can do more macro stuff, interiors, detail stuff.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant thing too. If there's lots of light pollution or there's lots of clouds, but the clouds aren't looking really all that great, go for those detail shots. Take the sky out, as much as you can, and go for the detail shots, and those will look great too. I mean, you should be able to, unless it's hailing or raining or there's a tornado or something, you should be able to get great shots in almost any reasonable weather.
Yeah. I have 3 conditions in which I don't shoot, and and any one or any combination of these 3. Very simple. Heavy rain, high winds, fog. That's it. Right. Any one of those 3, because for what I look for, doesn't work.
I've even done the fog before, because the fog rolls in unexpectedly, and I'll just go, whatever. I'll just keep shooting. Yeah. So I've even done that before, and it looks okay. So
it does give it almost kind of a creepy look when it's because it's almost like some clouds where it's just kind of smoothing through there.
Yeah,
and it'll give the light an odd look.
Yeah, for me, it depends on the kind of fog. The fog we get here is typically all-inclusive, completely blanketing. It's just like, it's everywhere, and you're instantly drenched, and everything around you is drenched, and there's not much there. A couple of years ago, there was a night where there was some offshore fog. It was just about 100 yards offshore, and then it stopped. So it did create this really cool opportunity to get some interesting stuff because then the moon was over and, that kind of stuff was okay. But the type of fog we get here, it's kind of like, the shoot's coming to an end. But I know what you're talking about. There are conditions that you can work with under certain types. Yeah.
Yeah. And my situation might be a little bit different because the fog that's going to roll in Cape Cod is it's going to be considerably denser, but it's also going to be considerably more moist. And so it's going to render that lens into like a giant wet mess a lot of times. So
yeah, it's full on like Stephen King's The Mist.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for creatures to come out. Yeah. So my will not shoot conditions or might be different than other people's. But to answer Outer Rim's question, that's kind of where I'm at on that, because I know any one of those is just not going to be conducive to what I'm looking for. Although I saw an Instagram account recently where they're only doing foggy shots on streets at night, usually with a single light source, like a street light, and they look fantastic. You know,
that's a whole nother story. That's like
It
rain and fog in urban environments. That's some of the best night shooting you can do.
Yeah.
And certainly with, people like Stieglitz and some of the night photography pioneers that we've had, they purposely went out when it was raining or it had just rained or when it was foggy. And they got these incredibly great moody photos.
Yeah. So if that's your goal, that's going to work totally fine for you. As a side note too, the K1 is incredibly weather resistant.
It is.
More so than any other camera that I've personally owned, as long as you have a equally weather resistant lens attached to it. So you could get away with those environments without much issue.
Absolutely. I would you could photograph in rain without a problem. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but you could get away with it. And certainly fog or super humid conditions, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
I've never worried about it.
No.
I've had weather resistant cameras before. One of them was the Canon 7D, and I went out. I was in Central Park one day, and it started pouring rain, and I said, it's no big deal. It's supposed to be able to take it. It shut off. It didn't turn on for another 5 days. It spent 5 days in a bag of rice, which totally worked. Yeah, but I never shot in any moist environments again with it. On the other hand, I just saw a K1 video pop up on YouTube where it's just sitting in the snow. I think it's 40 seconds of that just sitting in the snow. There's videos of it being run under a shower head. You know, you're not going to use it for deep sea diving, but if you're caught in the rain or fog or the desert dust, I think you'd be totally fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic camera.
Yeah. And I've shot in heavy snowstorms before for the holiday stuff. And I've not worried about it at all. My biggest concern was just wiping the lens down when the snowflakes hit the glass. But it's nice to have that ability to just forget and stop the worry on that.
Years ago, I had been shooting in West Virginia, and about the time that I got to the location, it had started raining. And and I don't mean like a light precipitation. We're talking full on gully washer. And one of the pictures I wanted to take was of the front of the building, but of course it was raining, so I really didn't have much of a choice except to take it when I was there. And so the person that was with me, I had them holding an umbrella over both of us and the tripod.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a pretty cool image because the rain kind of gave you some streaks to the light, especially up in the sky, because it was in a town, and so the city lights were kind of lighting it up a little bit also. And so you got all these lines running through there. I didn't get the camera wet,
right?
But it did end up with a pretty cool image.
Yeah. It's nice to have a helper.
It was very nice. I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah.
I'll bet.
Yeah, I bet. I would. Somebody must make a small umbrella attachment for a hot shoe mount, you know, like one size up from what you'd get in a daiquiri, you know. there's a marketing.
Got wet.
Yeah.
Right now,
you would have gotten wet, but
there's someone furiously taking down notes on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be the newest.
We should get a kickback.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We come up with a fancy name for it, but it'll be a hot shoe umbrella or something.
Yeah.
Yep. That's got to be out there somewheres. I don't know, but yeah. Okay. All right. So we all agree that we'll shoot in more extreme conditions than maybe some would consider, and then we all kind of have our different limits, and it just depends on what your goal is and where you are at the time. And no, we have no taxi that drives us around except for Ken occasionally.
Yeah.
Right. And
I've heard he's not for hire though.
Oh, yeah, probably not. No. We've all shot in super, super hot weather before, because I've shot in Borrego Springs when the sun had gone down and it's 11 o'clock and it's still triple digits. So.
And that's its own problem, not only because it's not comfortable, but, you know, if you're shooting at higher ISOs, you're going to get noisy images or, you know, lots of speckles on there. I've had that here on the Cape. I had a night several years ago. It was still in the 80s, and I couldn't really shoot past 2 minutes before I started getting a lot of noise. That was on an older Canon camera. So the weather may dictate your abilities, your camera abilities as well, although that's not that big of an issue anymore. Not as big as it used to be, but still something to be aware of. Yeah,
exactly.